The biggest struggle is getting past the stereotypes that Hollywood has portrayed us as. There is a huge void of information that's not taught in the schools. You know, we had this huge history. Most people don't realize that pre-Columbian estimates of the population in what is now just the United States was close to 20 million people. 400 years later, during the U.S. Census of 1896, there was about 235,000 people. So that's I mean, there was almost 20 million people disappeared, or a genocide, if you will. So the history books don't reflect all of that information. They don't reflect the fact that there were probably 1,000 tribes around at that time. When I go into schools today and I ask either both the children or the teachers, even principals, how many tribes are there in the United States, most will say 15 to 20. I mean, it's amazing how little people know, when in fact there are 566 different federally recognized tribes. So you've got all this information about Native people that is not being taught to the children and hasn't. Therefore, the adults don't know it, and it's just this vicious cycle. The reservation system really started back in the 1800s. In the late 1800s, 1880s, 1890s, the residential schools really began to become popular.
It always amazes me that nobody knows about the Indian boarding schools. I mean, society here doesn't know, and the government hasn't ever taught their people about what happened here. Whereas in Canada, it's the government has made a sad attempt, but they did make an attempt to apologize for the schools that the Native children were forced to go into.
And there was much abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, lots of abuses that took place in these residential schools. And that has had very damaging effects on our Native people. Even today, that's why today on our reservations, you have great poverty. In our reservation, 5 of the 7 poorest counties in the United States are on reservations in South Dakota. You've got unemployment in some of these communities, these reservations that are 80, 90%. You've got yearly incomes of $5,000, $7,000 in some of these. I mean, that's a family's income for a year. You've got abuse rates, you've got sexual abuse rates that conservatively are probably 6 or 7 out of 10 people on the reservation have been sexually abused. So you've got a lot of these very, very staggering statistics, but none of these things, none of this dysfunction was part of our traditional lifestyle.
I think when people come to our reserves and they come, they love the people, and then they leave, and then they're like out of your life. We're such relationship-oriented people that, they're like, oh, they came, and then they never came back again. I wonder what we did.
There are many organizations that are attempting to have an impact in these communities, but I think probably the key is to work with organizations and ministries that already have an established relationship in the communities.
One thing I know about Native people is like they love joking, they love socializing and making friends. And there's people who do come to the reserves and they disappear. It kind of makes the relationships be surface.
Take the time to find out an organization, an elder, an individual, a ministry, a church, or something that's in that community that you can come serve alongside. And probably without the camera and the video and all the high-end stuff to send back, because we get enough people coming in taking pictures. We want people to come in and just be a part of the community.
The number one thing that people can do to help Native people is to be available to help, to just to be willing to educate themselves by spending time with people who are Native, and even people who are not Native but who are in strong relationships with Native people, not to come in with their own preconceived ideas, like this is what Native people are and this is how they behave and this is what they do, but letting yourself be a blank slate and be open to learning.
Just make a long-term commitment. I don't know what a long-term is. Maybe it's 2 months, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 10 years. Or just go in and say, you know what, I'm going to be here till it's time to go, which is much more of a native approach to it. I don't know when it starts, I don't know when it finishes. Hopefully I'll know when I get there.